was a cold and rainy night in October 2003 when Liam, a 28-year-old office worker, boarded the last train home. The day had been long, and he was exhausted, eager to get back to his cozy apartment on the outskirts of the city. The train car was nearly empty, the occasional flicker of the overhead lights adding to the eerie atmosphere. Outside, rain streaked the windows, and the sound of thunder echoed faintly in the distance. Liam glanced at his watch. 11:47 p.m. He had a 45-minute ride ahead and decided to close his eyes, hoping to nap briefly before his stop. But the rhythmic clatter of the train's wheels was interrupted by an unusual sensation, a strange drop in temperature that made him shiver. When he opened his eyes, the train was slowing down. He wasn't supposed to reach his station for another 20 minutes. Peering out the window, Liam noticed the train pulling into a station he didn't recognize. The platform was dimly lit, and a thick mist swirled around the edges. There was no name on the sign, just an old rusted board covered in grime. Confused, he checked his route map but couldn't find any mention of a station at this location. The train came to a halt with a hiss of steam, and the doors slid open. Liam looked around. There were no other passengers on the platform, just rows of old, empty benches under flickering lights. Despite his unease, he decided to step off the train to get a better look. After all, he thought, maybe this was a new station he hadn't heard about, or perhaps there was an unscheduled stop due to maintenance. As soon as Liam's feet touched the platform, he felt an unsettling stillness in the air. The rain had stopped, and the mist seemed to envelop him like a shroud. The platform stretched out endlessly in both directions, with no visible exits or signs indicating where he was. He turned around to step back onto the train, but his heart sank. The train was gone. It hadn't made a sound as it left, and Liam hadn't seen it pull away. One moment it was there, and the next the tracks were empty. Panic began to set in. He looked at his phone, but there was no signal, and the battery percentage seemed to drain rapidly. Calling out for help, his voice echoed eerily, swallowed by the fog. He started walking down the platform, hoping to find a stairwell, an elevator, or even a maintenance worker who could explain what was happening. But as he walked, he realized the platform seemed to stretch on forever, looping back into itself. As he wandered, Liam began noticing strange details. The advertisements on the walls were outdated, promoting products and events from decades ago. A poster for a 1978 concert caught his eye, and he realized that every ad was similarly from a time long past. Suddenly, he heard faint footsteps behind him. Relief washed over him. Someone else was here. He turned around, expecting to see another stranded passenger or a station worker, but the platform was empty. The footsteps grew louder, circling him, though no one appeared. Then, a voice whispered, low and guttural, "Why are you here?" Liam froze, his breath hitching. The voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. He tried to answer, but his voice caught in his throat. Desperate, Liam ran down the platform, his footsteps echoing loudly. He came across an old, wooden bench with a newspaper lying on it. Picking it up, he noticed the date, October 16, 1953. His stomach churned. The headline spoke of a tragic train derailment that had occurred at a nearby station, one that had been permanently closed and demolished after the accident. The details were chilling. The derailment had killed dozens of passengers, and rumors swirled that the station was haunted by their restless spirits. Liam suddenly realized that the platform he was standing on must have been part of the old station, somehow lingering in a liminal space between the past and the present. As he pieced this together, the mist around him thickened, and the air grew colder. Shadowy figures began to emerge from the fog, silent, motionless, and staring. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their presence sent waves of terror coursing through him. Liam's instincts kicked in, and he sprinted down the platform, shouting for help. To his relief, he saw a faint light in the distance. It was another train, slowly approaching. The sound of its horn shattered the eerie silence, and the shadows around him seemed to retreat. As the train pulled in, Liam didn't hesitate. He leaped onto the car just as the doors were closing, collapsing onto a seat, his chest heaving. Looking out the window, he saw the shadowy figures on the platform watching him as the train sped away. When he finally reached his intended station, Liam stumbled out, disoriented and trembling. He told the station staff about the strange stop, but they insisted there was no such station on his route. Even after reporting the incident to authorities, no one could explain what had happened. Years later, Liam still avoids trains whenever possible. He researched the history of the demolished station and found numerous accounts of strange occurrences in the area. To this day, he wonders whether he had stumbled into a crack in time or if he had been drawn into the ghostly remnants of a tragedy long past. Whatever the truth may be, Liam's story serves as a chilling reminder. Some places never let go of their history, and some journeys are meant to be forgotten. In the summer of 1987, a group of 5 friends, Mark, Ashley, Brian, Sophia, and Eric, boarded a late-night train in Pennsylvania. They were returning from a weekend camping trip in the Poconos, tired but exhilarated after days spent hiking and laughing around campfires. The train was nearly empty, and the quiet hum of its movement offered a comforting backdrop as they settled into their seats. The friends spread out across a single car, their backpacks stacked haphazardly on the seats. Outside, the darkness of the countryside was pierced only by the occasional flicker of distant lights. Mark, the most restless of the group, stared out the window, watching the trees blur into shadowy shapes. As the train rumbled through a particularly desolate stretch, Mark noticed a man in an old-fashioned conductor's uniform walking down the aisle toward them. He appeared to be in his late 50s, with a neatly trimmed mustache and a stern expression. His uniform was immaculate but oddly outdated, like something out of a 1930s movie. "Tickets, please," the man said, his voice deep and steady. The friends exchanged amused glances. Ticket inspections at this hour were rare, but they complied. Each handed over their ticket, and the conductor punched them with a small, silver device before returning them. "You folks enjoy your ride," the conductor said, tipping his cap before moving toward the next car. His polished shoes made no sound on the floor as he walked away. As the train continued its journey, Sophia, ever the curious one, remarked, "Did anyone else notice how old his uniform looked? It was like he stepped out of a time machine." Brian laughed. "Maybe it's a gimmick, like a retro-themed train service." But Ashley shook her head, frowning. "I don't think so. I've been on this line before, and I've never seen anyone dressed like that. It's kind of weird." Mark, still staring at the door where the conductor had exited, suddenly spoke up. "Did you hear his footsteps? Or, I guess, not hear them? It was like he was gliding." A nervous silence fell over the group as they processed this detail. Still, they tried to brush it off. After all, there had to be a reasonable explanation. A few minutes later, Eric decided to grab a soda from the vending machine in the next car. As he passed through the door, he paused, startled. The connecting car was completely dark, its lights flickering weakly. Peering into the gloom, Eric saw the conductor standing at the far end of the car. His back was to Eric, and he appeared to be staring out the window. Something about the figure made Eric uneasy, the way he stood so still, as if frozen in time. Sir?" Eric called out, his voice hesitant. The conductor didn't respond. Instead, he slowly turned his head, just enough for Eric to catch a glimpse of his profile. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes sunken and hollow. Eric stumbled back, his heart racing. The lights flickered again, and in that split second of darkness, the conductor disappeared. Eric rushed back to his friends, breathless and trembling. He recounted what he had seen, and the group exchanged uneasy glances. Mark, ever the skeptic, suggested they might be overreacting. Maybe it's just a trick of the light, he said, or a weird reflection, but Ashley wasn't convinced. She pulled out her phone and started searching for information about the train line. What she found made her blood run cold. The route they were traveling on was infamous for a tragic accident that had occurred in 1946. A conductor named James Eldridge had been working on the train when it derailed on a sharp curve, killing him and dozens of passengers. Survivors reported seeing James trying to help people escape, but he had been crushed beneath a fallen car. Over the years, there had been countless reports of a shadowy figure appearing on the train, always dressed in an old-fashioned uniform. Some claimed he inspected tickets, while others said he simply stared out the windows, as if mourning the lives lost on that fateful day. As Ashley read the story aloud, the train suddenly lurched, and the lights in their car dimmed. The friends sat frozen, their breath visible in the sudden chill that enveloped the space. The door at the far end of the car creaked open, and the conductor stepped inside. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, his expression emotionless. "Tickets," he said again, his voice echoing unnaturally. This time, no one moved. The friends sat in stunned silence, their eyes locked on the ghostly figure. Slowly, the conductor walked past them, his form flickering like a poorly tuned television. He stopped near the back of the car, turned, and pointed toward the window. Through the fogged glass, the friends could see a memorial plaque illuminated by the train's headlights. It marked the site of the 1946 derailment, commemorating the lives lost, including James Eldridge. The conductor turned back toward the group, gave a slow, solemn nod, and vanished into thin air. When the train finally pulled into their station, the friends practically sprinted onto the platform, desperate to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the car. They reported the incident to the station staff, but their account was met with skepticism. Over the years, they remained haunted by that night, their memories of the shadow conductor vivid and unshakable. Whether he was a restless spirit seeking closure or a guardian watching over the route, one thing was certain. The ghost of James Eldridge was very real, and he wasn't going anywhere. Some tragedies leave an imprint too deep to fade, and some souls refuse to rest. The next time you board a late-night train, keep an eye out. You never know who might be punching your ticket. Rachel was a 34-year-old marketing professional who worked in London. Like many commuters, she had a love-hate relationship with the underground system. The crowded trains, delays, and suffocating heat in the summer often tested her patience. Yet, there was something oddly comforting about the routine of catching her usual train at King's Cross Station. It was a Wednesday evening in November 2012 when the strange events began. Rachel had stayed late at the office to finish a presentation and arrived at the station close to midnight. The bustling crowds had thinned, leaving the platforms eerily quiet. She made her way to Platform 6, where the last train of the night would arrive. The platform was deserted except for a middle-aged man sitting at the far end, hunched over a newspaper. Rachel pulled out her phone, scrolling through social media to pass the time. That's when she heard it, a faint, distant cry for help. At first, Rachel thought she was imagining things. The sound was faint, almost like the distant wail of a child. She looked around, but the platform remained empty except for the man, who didn't seem to notice anything. The cry came again, louder this time. Help! Please, help me. Rachel's heart raced. She moved toward the edge of the platform, peering into the darkness of the tracks. The cries seemed to come from below, echoing through the tunnel. Hello? Is someone there? She called out, her voice trembling. There was no response, just the unsettling sound of her own voice bouncing back at her. Rachel turned to the man at the end of the platform, hoping for reassurance. Do you hear that? Someone's calling for help. The man didn't look up from his newspaper. Instead, he muttered, Ignore it. Don't get involved. His response sent a chill down Rachel's spine. What do you mean? Someone could be hurt. The man finally met her eyes, his expression grim. You can't help them. No one can. Just wait for your train and leave. Unable to shake the cries, Rachel decided to investigate. Against her better judgment, she descended the stairs at the end of the platform, leading to a maintenance area. The cries grew louder as she moved deeper into the dimly lit corridor. Hello? She called again. Her voice wavered, fear creeping into her tone. At the end of the corridor, she found a heavy iron door slightly ajar. Pushing it open, she discovered an old, unused tunnel. Rusted tracks ran along the floor, and the air was thick with dust and mildew. The cries were deafening now, echoing around her. Rachel's phone flashlight illuminated the tunnel, revealing old graffiti on the walls and discarded tools scattered on the ground. Her stomach churned as she noticed a dark stain on the floor, an unmistakable shade of dried blood. Suddenly, the cries stopped. The silence was deafening, amplifying Rachel's pounding heartbeat. She took a tentative step forward, her every instinct screaming at her to turn back. Without warning, a piercing scream erupted from deeper within the tunnel. It was agonizing, filled with desperation and pain. Rachel clutched her ears, dropping her phone in the process. Its light flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Panicked, she scrambled to pick it up. As the light steadied, she caught a glimpse of a figure standing at the far end of the tunnel. It was a man, his face obscured by darkness. He stood unnaturally still, his head tilted slightly as if he were watching her. Help me, the figure whispered. Rachel stumbled backward, her flashlight trembling in her hand. She turned and bolted back toward the platform, her footsteps echoing loudly in the confined space. When she reached the top of the stairs, she was breathless and shaking. The man with the newspaper was gone. Moments later, her train arrived. She boarded it in a daze, collapsing into an empty seat. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her. The next day, Rachel couldn't let go of what she had experienced. She began researching the station's history and discovered a horrifying story. In the 1940s, a worker named Thomas Gray had died in an accident while repairing the tunnel beneath Platform 6. Witnesses reported hearing his screams for hours before rescue workers could reach him. But by then, it was too late. Over the decades, countless commuters and station staff had reported hearing ghostly cries in the area. Some claimed to see a shadowy figure wandering the old maintenance tunnels, reliving his tragic death. Rachel returned to the station a week later, determined to find closure. She spoke to a station worker about her experience, hoping for answers. The worker sighed, his face pale. You're not the first. That tunnel hasn't been used in decades, but people still hear him. Some say he's trapped there, looking for help he'll never receive. Rachel never ventured near Platform 6 again, opting to take alternative routes even if it meant a longer commute. The cries, however, continued to haunt her dreams, a constant reminder of the restless spirit trapped beneath the station. Some places are stained by tragedy, their echoes lingering long after the world has moved on. The next time you hear an unexplained cry for help in the shadows, ask yourself, are you ready to face what might be calling you?